me ask you something. What would happen if you mixed a war machine with drug dealing? Or what would happen if you mixed scuba diving equipment with extortion? But most importantly, what can become when you mix awesome punk with brilliant bands, quality pressing, and a friendly community? Tankcrimes! I love Tankcrimes. I love all the bands Scotty selects, I like the way he keeps it real, and I find it interesting how this label, not band, label, has developed a fan base. A cult following, if you will. I like the majority of the releases. This is April 2016, and so far he's had something like 93 albums. I'm going to review every single one of them as fast as I can. Get ready, you're in for a ride.
On the Bandcamp website, you can see the TCHC Punk Singles Omnibus, which contains their first few EPs. You know, the ones that have been out of print for some time. The Deadfall 7-inch is harsh hardcore punk that knows how to slow down and groove once in a while. Case of Emergency 7-inch is more doomy and noisy punk with a tone as harsh as Born Dead gets sometimes. Funeral Shock sounds like it was recorded in a can, but the vocals sound like Beefcake the Mighty, so it sounds like a fun live band. The Scurvy Dog 7-inch is produced nicely with the same style punks of the previous few bands, but a bit more chaotic. Strong Up 7-inch is nastier than the other bands on this comp. Bassy, stage diving material. STFU sounds more like grindcore power violence, and it rolls. Imagine Spaz with both sets of vocals. These are the exact same bands that were on 6 Weeks Disturbing the Peace compilation. Well, maybe Scotty thought, well, those are some of my favorite bands on 6 Weeks right now, so maybe I'll pick those up. Some other stuff that these bands did, like Deadfall, they had a 7-inch called Keep Telling Yourself It's Okay. It's better produced and harder than the stuff on their first 7-inch.
Funeral Shock would release the single California's Dead. It was produced by Jeff Leppard, so it's better produced than their other 7-inch. It's mid-paced, and the songs on here are songs that you want to stomp around to. It's angrier and heavier.
Strong Up had their LP, Society Rotted Hell. It's more hardcore and faster than Funeral Shock, Deadfall, and their own 7-inch. This album pays great tribute to 90s hardcore while being its own new school hardcore album. It's one of the essential punk albums from the 2000s. Strong Up also did a split with Direct Control. The Strong Up stuff is produced a bit better, a tad brighter in tone, and it's speedier than their previous works. Direct Control side features Siege-style vocals. It has just as many thrash characteristics as punk ones. They released their own full-length Bucktown Hardcore in 2010. It's catchier, produced better, tighter, more fun, has gang vocals, and has a positive vibe throughout. Going back to the earlier releases, John the Baker and the Malnourished do a harsh, fuzzy, negative mosh fest with their Fire Marshal Law album. Short and full of impending doom. Particularly the vocals and lyrics are painful, but this is a good example of sludge metal and punk mixed together.
John the Baker also did an acoustic split with MDC. Very unlikely band you would pick to do an acoustic split with, right? The result is absolutely awesome. Sounds like something you could hear at a punk coffee house. Personally, I'd like to hear the acoustic version of MDC's Let's Kill All the Cops on a musical Sunday.
Instant Asshole! Their album Straight Edge Failure has a brilliant, crunchy guitar tone, and the backing vocals make the album sound bigger. DUI or Die is filled with more despair, and I just love how fast the singer is going.
I want to get drunk and high at the same time! Their split with Mouth Sewn Shut has the same type of sound. It's just not quite as thick. Mouth Sewn Shut do their brilliant mix of ska and punk, and it sounds as awesome as always. Born Dead and Peligro Social did a killer split together. It's packaged really nice and produced really well. The packaging contains a lot of insightful information on domestic abuse, which is the subject of Born Dead's song. They're hardcore and doom-ridden. Meanwhile, Peligro Social does nice melodic Spanish punk. Really powerful stuff here, man.
Peligro Social's No Religion album sounds angrier, but has great guitar solos here and there. Cool stuff, not hardcore punk because it's not quite as fast, but I'm totally digging the musicianship that these guys have. I'm also digging the different rhythms they do. On their split with TV Evangelists, they do what they do best with a bit more force. TV Evangelists are more obscure, but good-paced Frisco punk. Annihilation Time! Surf punk similar to Ghoul, but not nearly as harsh. Really fun stuff, but it also knows how to get heavy and shake up your brains once in a while. Their 7-inch Cosmic Unconsciousness is more hardcore punk without surf stuff, but the 2 album is better produced and probably their best album ever. More variety because none of the songs sound the same. Sometimes effects are used and they change the tempos quite a bit.
Next up, Population Reduction! I love Population Reduction! Believe it or not, they're the band that got me into metal a few years back. They're a nice mix of death grind, thrash, and crossover. Very humorous as well. At the Throats of Man Forever is a satisfactory short EP filled with humor and all kinds of rawness. But I also have the rare tour edition. Each Birth of New Disaster is the same thing. The album reeks of Terrorizer and Autopsy influences. It's more sample-ridden, it's heavy, and it's absolutely fun to listen to. It's more intense and the songs are longer. And you know who I absolutely love? I love Abscess. They're one of my favorite bands. And Population Reduction was the last band to do a split with Abscess. See, Abscess wanted to make an album that was meant to be heard as a record. And what a record. Population Reduction does what they do best, and Abscess do more of their raw, sloppy punk style that sounds like their first two albums, as opposed to their later albums, which are more slow doom metal.
Peter Svoboda of Population Reduction also did guitar on Vulture. If there's anything Vulture loves, it's thrash. It's a hastily written album, but you can't tell at all. Very tight, has a nice old school vibe to it.
Impale the Last Gasp! It's a death metal and gore grind album that worships carcass and hemorrhage, but I'd take this over general surgery any day. The riffs and the vocals sound very similar to Ghoul, but what a coincidence. It's rumored that members of Ghoul are also members of Impaled. It's really catchy and I absolutely love the artwork.
Splatter Thrash was the first album that was picked up by Tankcrimes, and it's about friggin' time. It's richly produced. It's great surf metal that's heavier than the acid that Jim Morrison dropped. Sometime down the road, We Came for the Dead and Maniacs were picked up and put on the same CD. These albums are so raw and so awesome and so heavy that they got their own catalog numbers twice when they were re-released later for their own vinyl reissues. Because if there's one band that deserves that, it is Ghoul. But we're also really good at taking crappy pop songs and turning them into masterpieces with gigs in America. And meanwhile, we take punk covers on our intermediate level hardcore album and make it sound really friggin' good and heavy and raw. We even had Odorous from Guar give us our crappy stamp of approval. Transsexual Zero is the fourth album, and it sounds like a Splatterglass Part 2, and it really slays. Features more surf metal influences than previous albums. Then you got Hang 10, which is basically this 10-inch instrumental EP. It doesn't even have Ghoul in it, it's just a concept album about these motorcycle gangs in Pennsylvania. We've become a novelty, but so has Cannabis Corpse. And we've done a split with Cannabis Corpse. It's some of the best songs they've ever done, and it's some of the best songs that Ghoul has ever done. It's heavier, better written, and some fan favorites that love to be played live.
Speaking of Cannabis Corpse, they're a death metal band whose song and album titles parody Cannibal Corpse mainly, with the bleeding resembling the weeding, and Tomb of the Resonated resembling Tomb of the Mutilated. But the songs themselves are completely original. The riffing style is very similar to Cannibal, but the music is more low budget and has kind of an old school vibe to it. Blunted at Birth has harsh production but still has good music. The Weeding is a short EP that features better production and slower songs. Tomb of the Resonated is much heavier than the rest of their albums, and I absolutely love the vocals on this one. Beneath Grow Light's Thou Shalt Rise parodies Deicide and Morbid Angel this time. This is their best album. It features more variety and the guitar work here is killer.
A&S Pressure Cracks. Really huge sounding crossover with all kinds of samples and special effects. It's really fast and technical.
Let Them Eat Wood has more variety with some jazzy songs, slow songs, surf songs. It's a compilation of 7 inches and splits since 2005. The Agoraphobic Nosebleed 5-inch rules. Agoraphobic Nosebleed does some bluesy grind and A&S does the crossover they do, all themed around beer. Ramming Speed split with them embodies a rawer and angrier sound, with the 8-minute song Rower's War taking on an epic metal vibe. Ramming Speed is E-flat tuned angry grindcore that hits hard. Anyway, so now that I have a few bands out of the way, it's time to go back to the back catalog and round out some one-off EPs by the bands on this label. IWKYF, Educated Guidance, a 2-man band that hits hard. I mean, that drummer is abusing the crap out of his drum set. Comedic punk and metal, something you have to hear for yourself though. Second Opinion, Youth Revolt, it's angry hardcore with gang vocals and stellar production.
King Generator features members of Municipal Waste, Anodyne, and Shank. It sounds a lot like His Hero's Gone because of the vocals and the speed. Good old classic hardcore cross sound. The song My One Regret is a doom metal sounding piece that needs to be heard by everybody who's having a hard time.
Dios Mios Shit Life 7-inch. It's a fun hardcore punk 7-inch, but what makes me remember this one the most is the music video for the title track. It's gotta be one of the best music videos I've ever seen. I've always wanted to play drums while in motion somehow, and I've always wanted to play guitar while floating in a swimming pool. Vulture Woodbreaker. It's Megadeth and Iron Maiden sounding thrash. It's old school and satisfying as hell. I'd love to hear a full-length album. Yellow Goat Pentagrammaton. This is an interesting one. It comes with a decorated slap bracelet. If you buy that, you also get the download code for the song. Anyway, it sounds like Venom, just with more guts. I really enjoy hearing old school styles being emulated like this. Year of the Dragon. It's fine punk with metal influences, particularly early Metallica. The title track is 18 minutes long. Christ! But it's got influences from progressive and theatrical bands while still having psychedelic moments like something a Life is Abuse album might have. Definitely a band that's going places if they keep doing stuff like this. Face the Rail. It's surfy, punk, and rock. It's good to hear that the bass and guitars often do different things on this one. Night Fever. They're a D-beat band from Copenhagen, Denmark. Brilliant high-pitched vocals and absolutely intense. Opposition Rising. It's brutal Boston hardcore with a blend of different punk styles. Blood-soaked and full of testosterone. Conquest for Death. Many nations, one underground. It's a master thrasher filled with thrash and hardcore. Would you believe that this was recorded in a day? Has some unconventional beats and sounds. The best example I can think of this is the final song, where it almost sounds like a Japanese folk song. Iron Reagan's 2012 demo. It was released on cassette by Tankcrimes, and it's a scorcher. It's got 4 songs with technical riffing. Think of a more politically charged Municipal Waste with more power in the vocals. Features Mark from A&S.
Iron Reagan also did a split with Exhumed, where their side was more powerful and captured their live energy better. Believe it or not, Exhumed is more grindcore influence on this release. Nice punk elements with all kinds of emphasis on dirty, distorted bass. It's so great when bands never forget their influences.
Vitamin X, full-scale assault. Swedish punk that gets creative with the guitar riffs and the artwork. About to Crack is heavier and more D-beat style with some thrash elements.
I love Kicker! Kicker is awesome! The gag with this band is that these are guys in their 40s who are dressed up as old people, with walkers and everything. And they're playing the dead style punk. I love how angry this thing sounds. It's their first 7-inch. Sounds like somebody definitely needed to vent or needed a hug when they were writing the lyrics.
Not You is Kicker's first album. It's obviously produced better with more patter and samples in the background. It's much more energetic than any of the EPs, and you can definitely tell that they were having fun in the studio. Toxic Holocaust! One of the bands that brought back thrash in the 2000s. Their split within FC is pretty rough, with Toxic Holocaust being punky while still having harsh vocals. Inept's side is more of a cross between Venom and Motorhead. The Toxic Holocaust Revelations single demo was released on a postcard with the lyrics on the back. Noisy obviously, but a raw recording. Toxic also did an incredible split with Municipal Waste titled Toxic Waste. Toxic Holocaust is being evil and more intense than ever, and Municipal Waste is doing what they do best with speed. Speaking of Municipal Waste, The Fatal Feast was released on cassette. More of the same from them but with a space theme, and back to the humorous days of the art of partying.
But the label also knows how to be nostalgic because he presses cassette tapes.
Obsessor had several demos, but they were all compiled into one big collection. Basically, they sound like a punk Motorhead mixed with Nuclear Assault. Has a raw, lo-fi crushing quality. Kicking Spit. To quote their bio, they play rock music in the vein of Lita Ford and Quiet Riot. Sounds amusing, but it's more of a thrashy alternative sound. Their tape psych rock bullshit is brighter with more songs, but Reality Dropout is a bit heavier. They sound like a band that could have been huge in the 90s. Big Eye's demo is a New York pop-punk band. A pop-punk band that's actually enjoyable to listen to, unlike any of the crappy bands on the Warped Tour. Cool female vocals reminiscent of Blondie. They know when to toughen it up. Ha ha ha! Benzine Nostalgia! It's friggin' heavy and crunchy grind with monstrous vocals. I love it. It's too bad that these guys aren't well known. It's a band that sings about crap and hookers. Dire Reality. It's very difficult to take seriously. It's death metal that sings about pirate hookers and crap. Even Ron Burgundy loves pirate hookers. If you can get past the lyrics and the song titles, it's actually quite enjoyable. Bat, Primitive Age. Yes. It sounds like Venom and Bathory, sort of like the Yellow Goat album. Given that they're from Virginia too, maybe this is a trend going on in the Richmond scene. It's very heavy. Imagine that you time traveled back to 1985 when there were magazines, no internet, and every year you looked forward to a new Iron Maiden album. Letrous Gaze, ZD Reticuli Blues. It's psychedelic punk, sounds a little like Bad Coyotes with its sound and Lords of Light with the vocals. Nightbirds, Born to Die in Suburbia. It's awesome New York fast punk with some surf influences. Think of Agent Orange and the Adolescents. The Other Side of Darkness is the same type of thing, but with psychedelic stuff interspersed.
The other way they're nostalgic is by the reissues that they do. Take these here. Dystopia's Human Equals Garbage and Brain Oil's self-titled album from the Life is Abuse label. They happen to be two of my favorite albums of all time. Dystopia is a timeless cult band with a lover of hate people philosophy. Nice sample-ridden mix of sludge, doom, and crust. The lyrics will make you very uncomfortable. I love it. Meanwhile, Brain Oil is more of a sludge punk band, extremely catchy, crushingly heavy, and causes a lot of tinnitus. 23 minutes long, has nice Sabbath-style doom metal riffs. Their second album, Death of This Dry Season, was released on cassette by Tankcrimes, and this album also causes tinnitus. It's more of the same by Brain Oil, but that's not a bad thing at all. Ha! Final Conflict's Ashes to Ashes got reissued too. It's nice, classic hardcore punk that takes on the Reagan years. This has been remastered and sounds better than ever. Ever since this was released, the band has gained somewhat of a cult following.
Spaz, yeah! They're one of the greatest power violence bands ever. The best way to hear them is on their Sweatin' to the Oldie volumes. Volumes 1 and 3 have been reissued by Tankcrimes, and they sound great. Spaz took simplicity and made it breathtaking. Connoisseur had their Stoner Justice demo. Later it would have live tracks added to it to make a full-length album. It's great stoner hardcore metal. It has thundering drums and addicting choruses. The Shrine, yeah! Killer band! They take all kinds of influences. It often sounds like a mix of Sabbath, Corrosion of Conformity, and Black Flag. Waiting for the War is a short EP, and it sounds like Snake from Voivod is singing. Their Bless Off album is more of an all-out break stuff kind of album. Victims had their A Dissonant album released on the label. It's really angry DB madness from Sweden. Their new album, Sirens, is ridiculously heavy. In fact, it's actually one of their better albums. I love the guitar sound and the artwork. Necrot's new album, The Labyrinth. Yeah! Necrot is awesome! Really old school sounding death metal. It's a nice break from the too clean, overproduced death metal that comes out a lot these days. These guys are gonna get big. They're a newer band. They formed in 2011, but these guys are definitely gonna go places. Vivisec, Nuked Identity. When Unholy Grave gets too hardcore for you, this is great Japanese hardcore punk. It's nicely produced, has a lot of gang vocals, has a great live energy, and is very, very fun to listen to. But it also knows when to get melodic. I really like the artwork.
Whew, that was a mouthful. The label continues to release albums, and I will stand with anticipation for every one of them. Check out the label and support the bands, it's all great. Hope you enjoyed this, like this, share this, show this to everybody. Thank you to Scotty, and thank you to all the bands that have been featured on this label.